A scream shattered the silence of the evil forest. Birds burst from the trees as an orphan's foot slipped and rough hands shoved her backward. She fell. Dry leaves exploded into the air as her body crashed into a deep hollow hidden beneath tangled roots. Pain shot through her ankle, stealing the breath from her lungs. Above her, 6 faces appeared at the edge of the pit, their shadows swallowing the last light of evening. For a heartbeat, she believed they would help. "Please," she cried, "pull me up." No one moved. Then laughter drifted downward, cold, uneasy, cruel. "Why not call your friend, the beast?" one girl mocked. "Maybe he will come and save you." Confusion crossed the orphan's face. "I only tried to help." Her fingers clawed at the roots, soil crumbling beneath her weight. "Don't leave me here," she begged. One by one, the maidens stepped away. "If that creature truly cares, let him prove it." Their laughter faded into the forest. Silence returned. But the orphan was not alone. Hidden beyond the clearing, golden eyes opened in the shadows. He had seen everything. The betrayal, the fall, the girl who defended him when others raised their weapons. The maidens believed they had abandoned her to the forest. They did not know the forest had already chosen a witness. And as her cries echoed through the darkness, one question lingered. What happens when the only person who showed kindness is betrayed and the creature she saved decides to answer? But to understand why kindness led her into darkness that night, we must return to where the story truly began. You're watching African Stories That Touch.
Once upon a time, in the ancient kingdom of Azunaya, elders believed every child entered the world carrying either a blessing or a story the world was not yet ready to hear. On a night when thunder refused to rest and rain struck the earth like restless spirits seeking shelter, a prince was born inside the royal palace. The entire kingdom rejoiced. Drums echoed across the hills. Women danced barefoot in the mud, their laughter rising above the storm. Fires burned through the night as villagers celebrated the long-awaited heir. For many seasons, the king and queen had prayed in silence for a child, and at last the gods had answered. But joy, like light, often attracts shadows. Beyond the palace gates, 3 figures stood unmoving beneath the rain, their dark wrappers heavy with water. Lightning revealed their faces only for a moment. They were witches. Once, healers among the people, women who understood herbs, dreams, and the quiet language of the unseen world. Years earlier, fear had turned the kingdom against them. Urged on by frightened elders, the king had banished all witches from the land, declaring their gifts dangerous to his rule. Their homes were burned, their names forbidden. Mothers warned children never to speak of them again. But exile does not kill memory, and memory, when wounded, learns to wait. As the newborn prince cried within the palace walls, the witches lifted their hands toward the storm. The first spoke, her voice carried softly by the wind. "You drove us from our home." The second closed her eyes as rain ran down her face. "You chose fear over understanding." The third looked toward the palace window where the child lay wrapped in gold cloth. "Then let your blood learn what it means to be feared." Lightning tore across the sky. Their voices rose together. "He shall walk between worlds, neither fully man nor fully beast, loved by none, accepted nowhere." The storm swallowed their words. Inside the palace, the baby's cry suddenly changed. By morning, the curse revealed itself. Tiny fingers curled into claws, his skin hardened like bark beneath silk blankets. A young maid screamed and dropped the baby's bathwater, fleeing the chamber as whispers spread through the corridors. Only 3 people remained: the king, the queen, and the old servant who had carried the king himself when he was a child.
The kingdom was told the prince was ill. But illness fades, the curse did not. As the boy grew, the palace changed around him. Mirrors disappeared from the walls. Toys were left untouched outside his chamber doors. One afternoon, a young servant entered carrying food and froze when the child turned toward her. The tray slipped from trembling hands, plates shattering across the floor. The boy did not cry. He only watched the servant run away. And nothing wounds a child more deeply than realizing love has learned to be afraid. The queen began visiting at night when fewer eyes could see her hesitation before embracing her son. The king stood farther away each year, grief hardening into silence. On the night the prince turned 5, the curse surged beyond control. A roar shook the palace halls, furniture splintered, torches fell, scattering sparks across stone floors as guards fled in panic. The queen wept openly, while the king faced a truth no father should ever face. The child could no longer live among humans. Before dawn, beneath heavy silence, the prince was taken beyond the Red River into the evil forest, a place older than memory, where travelers entered, but stories rarely returned. A shelter was built deep within the trees. Food was sent with royal guards. The first guard never returned. Then another, then another. Soon the path into the forest grew untouched, swallowed slowly by vines as whispers spread among the people. The forest was alive, and it protected its own. Years passed beneath the weight of regret until desperation drove the king to seek a powerful seer whose blindness allowed her to see what sight could not. She listened to the wind for a long time before speaking. "Your son lives." Hope returned like breath after drowning. But before midnight on his 25th birthday, he must receive love freely given, not from fear, not from duty, but true love. Otherwise, the beast will remain forever. From that day forward, time itself became the kingdom's greatest enemy. And as the prince's 25th year drew near, the king summoned the elders and gave an order that would change many destinies, including that of a quiet orphan girl who did not yet know the forest was already waiting for her. In the outer part of Azunaya, where the houses leaned closer together and smoke from cooking fires curled lazily into the sky, lived a girl whose name was spoken more in sympathy than in celebration. She had lost her mother when she was still small enough to believe sleep could solve sadness. Her father followed seasons later, leaving her in the care of a woman who never truly accepted her presence under the same roof. To the village, she was gentle. To strangers, she was kind. But inside her own home, she moved like a visitor afraid of overstaying her welcome. Before dawn each morning, she swept the compound while others slept. She fetched water from the stream, balanced heavy firewood upon her head, and cooked meals whose aroma filled the air
long before she tasted a single bite. Yet, she rarely complained. And kindness, when it survives hardship, shines brighter than beauty. The villagers noticed. Old women blessed her quietly. Children followed her laughter. Even passing traders remembered her greetings long after leaving the village. And without meaning to, she became loved. That was the beginning of the problem. Her stepmother watched these small moments carefully. The smiles, the praise, the way neighbors compared the orphan's humility to her own daughter's pride. Envy does not arrive loudly. It grows slowly, like a crack spreading across clay after the first heat of harmattan. Her daughter, Angela, was beautiful in the way wealth and attention often create beauty. Her wrappers were bright, her jewelry plentiful, her confidence loud enough to fill any gathering. Since childhood, she had been raised with one promise repeated again and again. You were born for greatness. And in her mother's mind, greatness meant only one thing, a crown. So when royal messengers arrived announcing the king's command that maidens from every clan would journey into the forest to search for the lost prince, excitement swept through the village like wildfire. Mothers began preparing their daughters immediately. Hair was braided with care. Wrappers were washed and dyed anew. Fathers spoke proudly of destiny, as though it were something that could be prepared like a feast. Inside the compound, Angela clapped her hands in delight. She said, "This is my moment. The prince will choose me." Her mother smiled, but her eyes drifted toward the orphan standing quietly near the doorway, because even she could see what others saw.
Grace cannot be taught, and the orphan carried it effortlessly. Whispers had already begun among villagers. If the prince values kindness, he may choose her. Those words burned deeper than insult. That night, long after the household slept, the stepmother sat alone beside a dying fire, staring into the embers as thoughts hardened into decisions. "A shadow cannot stand beside my daughter," she murmured. The next morning, when elders came to select maidens for the sacred journey, she stepped forward before anyone could speak. "My stepdaughter is strong," she said sweetly. "Let her represent our household." The orphan's head lifted in surprise. For the first time, her stepmother's voice carried warmth. Hope flickered quietly inside her chest. Fragile, cautious hope that perhaps she had finally been accepted. She did not see the brief exchange of glances between the woman and two other maidens standing nearby. She did not notice the small pouch of coins later pressed into waiting hands. "Whisper she does not return," the stepmother whispered where no one watched. Preparations began at once. On the morning of departure, the chosen girls gathered at the sacred shrine at the edge of the village. The chief priest moved among them slowly, rubbing white powder markings across their foreheads and shoulders. "From this moment, your voices belong to silence. Speak no word until you reach the forest. Some spirits listen for fear carried in human sound." Palm fronds were placed between their lips. Drums beat slowly as villagers gathered to watch. Mothers wiped tears. Children waved eagerly. Elders lifted prayers into the morning air. The orphan stood among the maidens, equal at last, her heart filled with a strange mixture of fear and wonder. She believed she was beginning a journey toward destiny. She did not know she was walking toward betrayal already planned. The procession moved forward in silence. Their footsteps soft against the narrow path as Azunaya disappeared behind them.
At first, the journey felt almost ordinary. Birds sang overhead, sunlight filtered gently through tall trees, dry leaves cracked beneath careful feet. The maidens walked in single file, palm fronds held between their lips as instructed, their white markings glowing faintly against their skin. No one spoke. Yet thoughts grew loud inside each mind. Some imagined returning as queen. Some feared they would never return at all.
The orphan walked near the back, her eyes wandering quietly over the forest. She noticed how the air felt different there, heavier, as though every breath passed through unseen memories. Hours passed. The trees thickened. Sunlight faded into long shadows even though the day was still young. And slowly the sounds of birds disappeared. One of the girls glanced around nervously. Another tightened her grip on the small charm tied around her wrist. Still, they continued. Until exhaustion broke discipline. A maiden near the front suddenly pulled the palm frond from her mouth, wiping sweat from her forehead. "I cannot walk another step," she complained aloud. "This journey is cursed." The words had barely left her lips when the wind stopped completely. Leaves froze mid-rustle. The forest held its breath. Then the air twisted. A violent whirlwind rose from nowhere, spinning dust and leaves into the sky. The girl stumbled backward as the wind circled the speaking maiden. Her eyes widened. She screamed. In a single terrifying moment, the whirlwind lifted her from the ground and swallowed her into its spinning heart. And then it vanished. The path stood empty. Only scattered leaves remained where she had stood. The remaining maidens stared in frozen disbelief. Fear spread among them like cold water. One girl began to cry silently, tears slipping down her cheeks around the palm frond still held between her lips. Another grabbed the orphan's arm tightly, trembling. Without needing words, they began to walk faster. The forest no longer felt like a place. It felt like something alive. The path twisted deeper until they reached a clearing where a small house stood alone between crooked trees. Smoke curled gently from its roof, rising peacefully into the air as though nothing dangerous existed in miles. Relief washed over several faces. A place meant people, and people meant safety. Two maidens exchanged hopeful glances and hurried toward the door despite warning looks from the others. They knocked once. The door opened slowly on its own. Warm light spilled outward. Without hesitation, they stepped inside. The door closed behind them. The remaining girls waited. Moments passed, then minutes. No voices came from inside, no footsteps, only silence. One girl moved closer, reaching cautiously toward the door, but before her fingers touched it, the house flickered. Like a reflection disturbed by water. And slowly, it faded away. Walls dissolved into air. Roof vanished into mist, until nothing remained but empty ground. The girls stumbled backward in horror. The forest had taken two more. Now fear took over them completely. They ran. Branches scratched their arms, roots caught their feet. Breath came in sharp bursts as panic pushed them forward without direction. By the time they stopped, only 9 remained. Exhaustion settled heavily upon them. Hunger gnawed at their strength. They collapsed beneath a wide tree whose branches stretched like protective arms overhead. That was when he appeared. A man dressed in palace guard clothing stepped calmly from between the trees, carrying a basket. Relief flooded the group instantly. "The king sent me," he said gently. "Food for your journey." His voice sounded normal, too normal. He placed the basket before them and stepped back politely. Inside were fruits and roasted meat, fresh and inviting. The orphan hesitated. Something felt wrong, not dangerous, but empty, like a smile without warmth. She shook her head slightly, trying to warn the others with her eyes. But hunger is louder than caution. Two maidens grabbed the food eagerly and began to eat. They laughed with relief. Strength returned to their faces. Then their laughter stopped. Their bodies shimmered faintly, like heat rising from stone. And before anyone could react, they disappeared. The basket fell to the ground untouched. The strange guard was gone. The clearing stood empty once more. Now, only 7 maidens remained. No one needed instructions anymore. The forest was testing them. And somewhere ahead, unseen beyond tangled trees, destiny waited patiently for the moment when fear would turn into cruelty, and cruelty would change everything.
Now, only 7 maidens remained. They walked closer together than before, fear stitching them into a single uneasy group. No one dared remove the palm frond from her mouth again. Even their breathing felt cautious, as though the forest itself might punish sound. The air grew colder. Mist curled low along the ground, wrapping around their ankles like wandering spirits. Above them, branches twisted together so tightly that daylight struggled to reach the earth. Somewhere in the distance, something moved. A low sound followed, not loud, not threatening, just present. A growl rolled softly through the trees. The girls froze. Slowly, they turned. At the edge of the clearing stood the creature. He was enormous, taller than any man, his body covered in dark fur streaked with old scars. Golden eyes shone beneath heavy brows, watching them with cautious stillness rather than hunger. He did not charge. He did not roar again. He simply stood there, as though unsure whether to approach or retreat. Fear, however, rarely waits for understanding. One maiden screamed behind her palm frond, the sound muffled but sharp enough to shatter the fragile calm. Another grabbed a fallen branch. Then panic spread faster than reason. They attacked. Stones flew first. Branches struck his shoulders. One girl thrust a sharpened stick toward him with shaking hands. The beast staggered backward, raising his arms to shield himself. A wounded sound escaped his throat, not anger, but confusion. The orphan stepped forward desperately, waving her hands. "No!" she tried to shout, her voice muffled by the palm frond. She pulled it from her mouth. "Stop! He isn't attacking us!" But fear had already become cruelty. Blow after blow landed until the beast collapsed heavily onto the ground. Dust rose around him. He lay motionless. Silence fell. The maidens stared, chests heaving, waiting for movement that never came. One whispered, half relieved, half horrified. Another pointed accusingly at the orphan. "You defended it." All eyes turned toward her. Suspicion replaced fear.
"You spoke to it," a girl said slowly. "You wanted to protect a monster." The orphan shook her head. "He was hurt. He wasn't trying to harm us." But reason cannot survive where fear seeks someone to blame. The two girls, secretly paid by her stepmother, exchanged a glance. Now was their moment. She slowed us down from the beginning. First, the whirlwind came, then the house, then the disappearances. The other nodded quickly. Bad luck follows her. Doubt spread through the group like smoke. The orphan looked from face to face, searching for kindness and finding none. At last, one girl spoke the words that sealed her fate. "If she loves the beast so much, let the beast protect her." They walked deeper into the forest until they reached a wide hollow hidden beneath tangled roots, a dark opening in the earth, barely visible beneath fallen leaves. Before the orphan understood their intention, hands grabbed her arms. "What are you doing?" she cried. No one answered. They pushed. She stumbled backward, losing balance as the ground vanished beneath her feet. Her scream followed her downward. The sound echoed through the forest. Above, 6 faces appeared briefly at the edge of the hole. Laughter followed, uneasy, forced, hiding fear behind cruelty. "Call your beast," one mocked. "Let him save you." And then they were gone. Silence returned. Far beyond the clearing, hidden between ancient trees, golden eyes opened slowly. The beast was alive, bruised, weak but awake, and he had seen everything. And as her cries faded into the forest, the creature she defended finally began to move. What happened next, no one in Azunaya was prepared for. Part 2 continues the story. Subscribe to African Stories That Touch so you don't miss it. Don't forget to leave a like, share your thoughts in the comments, and share this story with someone who loves powerful African tales.